Good morning and welcome to our Then and Now panel discussion. My name is Kristen Conroy and I'm Emmanuel's Vice President for Alumni Relations. While we'd prefer to be gathering in person, we're thrilled to have the opportunity to come together today and throughout the weekend to celebrate our reunion classes. In 2019, we hosted a similar panel as part of our centennial, and it was such a successful event, we wanted to offer a special Alumni Weekend version with a focus on graduates from our reunion class years. Today, we'll hear from our panelists on what was happening on campus and around the world while they were students, and also how Emmanuel shaped their lives and careers. If you have questions during the program, please feel free to ask them via the Q&A feature. We will answer if time allows at the end. We're delighted to have such an accomplished group of alumni panelists with us today. Before we meet them, it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Joanne Quinn-Moffett from the class of 1970. Joanne currently serves as the president of the Alumni Association Board of Directors. In addition, she is a member of the advisory board of Emmanuel School of Business and Management. In 2015, she retired after a lengthy career in human resources that included senior HR management roles in privately held and publicly traded global organizations. Joanne lives in Hudson, Mass. With her husband, Ken. Please join me in welcoming Joanne.
Thank you, Kristen. I'm so enthused about today's program and really honored to introduce our panelists, which I'll do by decade or class. And I really look forward to their presentation. Beginning with Andrea Todesca Ryan, class of 1966, who's been a member of the Board of Trustees since 2012. Andrea retired in 2008 after a career in intellectual property laws. At retirement, she served as Vice President and Assistant General Counsel for Patents of Wyeth Pharmaceutical Research. From 1990 to 2000, she was Intellectual Property Counsel for Warner Lambert Company, we all know as the inventor of Lipitor. Prior to that, Andrea was in private practice in New York City, where she was an associate and later partner at Brumbaugh, Graves, Donahue, and Raymond, now Baker and Botts, and also of counsel at White and Case. Andrea worked as a chemist prior to law school, receiving her JD from Hofstra University in 1976. She and her husband, Stephen, are enjoying retirement in the Berkshires. Welcome, Andrea. Next, Marian Ryan, class of 1976, and also a member of our Board of Trustees since September 2017. Marian has been the Middlesex District Attorney since 2013. Before becoming District Attorney, she served in various leadership positions, including General Counsel, Chief of the Domestic Violence and Disabled Elderly Units, and as Senior Counsel in the Family Protection Bureau. As District Attorney, Marian has expanded initiatives in Middlesex County, including utilizing restorative justice practices to intervene in the lives of at-risk youth and young adult, expanding diversion. And she's been acknowledged for her leadership on the opioid crisis and for developing other initiatives aimed at keeping children and elders safe. She's an advocate for reforming the criminal justice system to put in place policies to address the collateral consequences for individuals who do get involved in the system, ensuring that we continue to focus on rehabilitation and not just the punitive aspects of our legal system. Marian regularly lectures and leads workshops on workplace safety, teen dating violence, internet safety, and schemes that target vulnerable populations. Marian's on the faculty of LaSalle College. She teaches courses in constitution law, the American legal system, and she's also previously taught at Wentworth, Emmanuel, and as an instructor at Harvard Law School's Trial Advocacy Workshop. Marian received her JD from Boston College School of Law in 1979 and lives in Belmont with her husband and 2 children. Welcome, Marian. Allie Dutson hails from the class of 2005 and is a member of the Emmanuel College Partnership Advisory Council. Allie is completing her first year as president of Our Lady of Perpetual Help Mission Grammar School in Roxbury, where she's been a teacher and leader for the past 15 years. Among her accomplishments include a new board development, creation of an innovative infant and toddler program, physical build out, and fostering a partnership so that there is, in fact, a culture of ongoing achievement. After receiving her degree in elementary education and liberal studies, Allie earned her Master of Education, Harvard Graduate School of Education, with a focus on innovation and technology. After 6 years of teaching, Allie obtained her school leadership license from Boston University, then completed the Lynch Leadership Academy Fellowship at Boston College, which is a cross-section executive leadership development program. In 2017, Allie was named Emmanuel College Education Alumna of the Year for her innovative practice in the field. Allie sits on the steering committee for the Boston Compact, a citywide organization that brings district, charter, and Catholic school educators together to provide equitable access for high-performing students and excellent instruction to all students. Beginning this summer, Allie will pursue her doctoral degree in educational leadership at the Boston College Lynch School of Education and Human Development. Welcome, Allie. David Somerville, who hails from the class of 2011 and is a member of the Young Alumni Council. David is a finance director at Santander Bank in Boston. He works with financial planning and analysis activities that are specific to expense management, budgeting, forecasting, and finance operations. David's been a financial professional since obtaining his degree in management and economics, and has previously held roles in Boston companies, including Topco and Fidelity Investments. David's also been very involved with Boston organizations such as 1 in 3, the Duplessis Foundation, as an annual guest speaker for Emmanuel's capstone management courses. David enjoys being an active athlete and is an avid Boston sports fan. I'm told, especially the Bruins and the Patriots, as well as any Vermont-affiliated team where David grew up. He resides in Barrington, Rhode Island, with his wife, Siobhan Franco Somerville, an Emmanuel alum, class of 2011 also, and their daughter, Naomi. Welcome, David. And thank you all for your participation today. We'll begin with our first question, and we'll start by responding in order of class. And certainly we can go randomly after that. If panelists would like me to repeat the question, please don't hesitate to ask. First question, tell us about the time period when you were at Emmanuel. What was happening on campus, in Boston, and in the world? Andrea, would you like to begin?
Okay, I think I was muted. I wanted to start our very interesting. I hope this panel will be interesting. The time I was in Emmanuel, the 60s, was quite a tumultuous time, and personally, what was going on in the 60s is what actually made me end up at Emmanuel. Women's rights were very at its infant stages then, but people find it hard to believe that I went to Emmanuel because in those days I wanted to major in the sciences, and Boston College did not admit women. And the only thing I could go to Boston College in the sciences, I could be a nurse or I could be a teacher. And because of that, I wanted the real sciences, and that's how I ended up at Emmanuel. But I say that because that's one of the things that was going on in the 60s when I was at Emmanuel was, of course, not only civil rights, but women's rights. And there were actually, when I was preparing for this, found out that each year of my year at Emmanuel had a significant event. In 1962, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I remember that vividly because I was a beginning of my chemistry studies. I was terrified about taking an exam. And I remember sitting in the library thinking, who cares about this chemistry test? We may all die tonight. And that was a very significant event in 1962. And then unfortunately in 1963, it was followed by the assassination of John F. Kennedy, which was a galvanizing event at Emmanuel. I can still remember, it almost brings me to tears now thinking of it. We all gathered in the chapel, and it was a terrible, terrible day. On a happier note, in 1964, the Beatles came to the United States. And I can remember taking time out from my bookish ways and went down and watched the Beatles with my mother and sisters and brothers. And my mother saying, those have to be wigs. No man could grow their hair that long. But again, that was a reflection of the attitudes of the time. And last but not least, my final year at Emmanuel, 65, I graduated in 66. But in November of 65 is again, I was diligently studying for a physical chemistry test. We had the largest blackout in US history. The entire East Coast went dark. And those were the significant things that happened in my 4 years at Emmanuel.
Thanks, Andrea. Marion?
So like Andrea, there was a lot going on when I was there. Emmanuel had just hosted the Women's Liberation Conference, which led to the publication of Our Bodies, Ourselves. So, which for women growing up then, it was the first time there were books like that. We were all smuggling around, and I still own my bootlegged copy of that book. The Vietnam War was going on, so there was just constant protesting in Boston, Harvard Square, through all of that time. I was at Emmanuel the day the war ended. It was just a really very, very different thing than I think when we hear about it historically. Lots of people in our class were dating people who were in Vietnam, had just come back from Vietnam, had lost brothers in Vietnam. So it was, because of the size of the community, it was a very personal impact. And streaking was what everybody did. Virtually every night, if you sat in the Emmanuel Library, you could see people streak, which for those who don't know is just running naked across campus faster than the security guards could chase you. And if you were clever, you managed to run by the library windows, loop around the gate, and get around the front and back to the other end of campus before they caught up to you. So it was just a great and fun time to be in Boston, to be at Emmanuel.
Thanks, Marion. Allie?
Well, I think I was probably the last person, maybe one of the last people actually, to tour Emmanuel while it was still co-ed, or excuse me, still all women. Pardon me, I have a visitor here. This is Aurora. And when I was touring, I was the last person to tour the, pardon me. David, would you like to go next? And I will come back.
Certainly. Good morning, everyone. So I joined Emmanuel in August of 2007. I was a young kid at the time, obviously, and joined and hit the ground running because I was on the soccer team. So I grew up in Vermont, a very small town in Vermont. Coming to Boston was a big change for me. You know, small town, farm town, to a city with ambulances whizzing by at 2 o'clock in the morning, waking me up. And at that time, we were at the field over at Clemente was still the Fens, and it was not the turf that we have now. So we were actually taking a bus to Boston English every morning and having soccer practice, and then running over at the Fens in the afternoon. That was our training. At the college, I would call it a time of growth. You know, having just switched to co-ed a few years prior to me joining, I think Emmanuel was growing at a rate of 1 to 200 new students a year, and by the time I joined, it was about around 1,500 students. In addition to that, there was a significant amount of construction taking place on campus. The administration building was being completed. And they were prepping to start the Wilkins Science Building, and that was completed when I was a junior in 2009. So I really joined at a time of great growth at Emmanuel, but also at a time when things in the world were also challenging, because the Great Recession of 2008-2009 also was taking place. And that was a really good learning opportunity, a learning opportunity for me, being a management student at the time, because it was a very prevalent topic in our courses. And I would say it was a good time to be a student through that time period, because coming out in graduating in 2011 was really when the economy was starting to pick up again, and job opportunities were coming full cycle. And you know, those were the big things going on in the world at the time.
Thank you, David. Allie.
So sorry about that. One of the wonderful joys of being a mom and Zoom calls being so normal nowadays is that there's just a lot of visitors all the time. But thank you for the grace. So when I began at Emmanuel, I had this experience of just really wanting to be on the Fenway as a student coming in from, originally from Connecticut. And I remember touring the school, and there still were those tennis courts there where now Merck has been built. They had just made the land lease agreement to construct Merck Pharmaceuticals on campus. And it was a really exciting time. And the other piece was that we were preparing to go co-ed. So we were the first co-ed class. And I remember pulling up in not one, but two station wagons or vans at the time to move into campus. And there was media there. There were people being like, oh my goodness, there are going to be men at Emmanuel. And it was such a big deal. There was a floor just for men in St. Joe's. And we had so many incoming students at the time that we had also at that time, I was part of the group that lived on the top floor of St. Anne's because we were a bigger class than they had expected to be. And I will say that I have met some of my very, very, very best friends from that class. They're still friends today, and I hope I get to talk a little bit more about them later on. But it was an incredible experience, and it didn't feel different to me because I went to a co-ed high school, but to see the change that was happening in the college at the time because of that shift was really interesting. We also, the second week of school, I remember coming out of my education class at like 9 in the morning or 9:30 in the morning and hearing that 9/11 had just occurred. It was a tremendously disruptive time and an opportunity for our class and all of the classes that were at Emmanuel at that time to really come together. And being someone who just had left home for the first time, it was really scary and nobody knew what was happening. And that was the period of time where it really stood still, and to be on a college campus at that time was really interesting and very supportive as well. Emmanuel did a lot of work to really bring people together during that time. And then after that, so much was happening politically too, to be engaged in that as a student and as a future leader, and have an opportunity to hear political discussions with Professor Natoli, who's still there. And I went to my first protest ever with Sister Mary Johnson. We marched down Boston Common together, and I really learned what it meant to be a participant in society and really explore the Catholic social teachings because of what was happening in the context of that time. It wasn't all serious though. There was a lot of fun stuff happening as well. As a senior, the Red Sox gave us the best gift on the planet, and the curse was reversed. And I just remember so fondly, literally every single game and every single series, the ALDS, the ALCS, leading up to that, we celebrated after every game. We would run to Fenway Park. We just had the best time celebrating that very, very special gift that the Red Sox gave to us. And to see also our senior year was the first year that the new dining hall was open, the Yawkey Center was open. So much transformation happened in those 4 years because of the really significant move to go to a co-ed model. But it was such a fascinating time to be on campus. And I'm so grateful that I got to share that one period of development in my life with Emmanuel, that important time in history.
Thanks so much, Allie. For our second question, during your relationship at Emmanuel as a student, a graduate, or trustee, how have you seen the college adapt to change? And also, why do you think Emmanuel is well positioned for the future? Marian, can we start this with you, please?
Sure. I think as Allie just mentioned, there's been a lot of change here. I mean, just when you look at from when Andrea came, I'm sure, to when David was leaving, enormous change here. And I think that we owe a lot of credit to the Sisters of Notre Dame. They were tough They had to be tough to survive coming here and starting so many schools. I think they always held firm. The one thing I remember them always talking about was never sell the property, use the land. And, you know, really the way Emmanuel has survived is because of the gift of that acreage in the Fenway. I was at Emmanuel at a time when things weren't so rosy financially, and we were renting out dorms and using space and bringing people on campus to try to keep the money coming in. And they used that land to do that. That continued with the Merck building coming on campus. So many partnerships that they did over the years in order to keep Emmanuel going and hold on to what they had. And I think that, you know, when you look at all of the schools that have not survived, especially what were women's schools, we owe a great debt to the people who just were not willing to let Emmanuel close. And I think when you set a goal, and I think that's a great life lesson, when you know you're not going to let the place close, you do whatever you do to keep it open. And whether that's going co-ed, whether that's doing graduate programs, opening a nursing school, whatever it is, it's that innovation and flexibility that I think is a part of our Emmanuel education and help to keep the school in business and really thriving.
Thank you, Marian. David.
Thank you. So, you know, kind of touching on some of the points that Marian mentioned, since I've graduated in 2011, I've really seen the college take a continued growth focus. And I think it's really illustrated by a couple things as part of its evolution. So I would say, you know, the new building, the new skyscraper, let's call it, has been a key draw for students. My cousin is actually going to live there this coming school year on probably the 13th floor with a few friends, and he'll be graduating next spring. So direct connection for me to where that has really, you know, been a measure of the school's investment. I've also found that, you know, the creation of the additional colleges or schools, you know, School of Management, School of Sciences, really draws some distinction for the college and offers more opportunities for incoming students. When I was a management major and within the management department at the time, I believe there was only 1 or 2 majors offered from the management school. Now I believe there's accounting, marketing, economics, as well as management. So that has really expanded and, you know, shows Emmanuel's commitment to continuing to, you know, take the needs of students first and position well for, you know, continued growth of those students, the college, its offerings, and you know, attractability with you know, everything else in Boston. Thank you.
Wonderful, David. Thank you. Andrea, I'm going to ask if you'd unmute yourself, please.
Gee, I didn't mute myself. Sorry. It magically
That's
happened.
quite all right. Modern technology.
I would second everything that people have said was on my list of things to change. I guess the one thing that hasn't been mentioned, I was on the board when the college went through the decision to actually build the high-rise dormitory. And that does show it was not a decision that was lightly taken. It was studied for a long time, but I think that this whole concept of change was part of that. They knew, as Marian said, if they didn't change, we would probably not be here. But they had the courage, Sister Janet and Sister Ann and the board at the time and the financial committee had the courage to take on debt, which is another thing that shows the resilience of Emmanuel. And then I think the other thing which we've just lightly touched on is Emmanuel's response to this pandemic. When I first heard this, I thought, oh, this could be the death knell of many colleges. But Emmanuel seemed to show its ability through the faculty, through people like Joe Kurtz, the academic dean, to make Emmanuel change to fit this very bad last year. So I think it's just, Emmanuel has always been changing. After all, I started out when women weren't allowed in Boston College. We wore stocks. And if you were married, you couldn't go to Emmanuel. I think you could be engaged, but we've come a long way, and I think Emmanuel has changed with the society, and I'm living proof of that. So it's adaptable and changing.
Thanks, Andrea. Allie, would you please unmute yourself? Thank you.
Thank you. Everything that's been said, the word that really sticks out in my mind is innovation. And it's been said to me multiple times throughout this pandemic that, it's the times of crisis where innovation matters most. And it's the fact that Sister Janet and Sister Ann Emmanuel has always turned toward innovation, has always turned toward that as a spirit of how can we not only get through this, but thrive, and how do we change the circumstances to be able to support the growth of our continued mission. I think of it a lot in terms of St. Julie Billiard and the founders of the Sisters of Notre Dame, thinking about that sunflower always turning toward God, turning toward the sun, and how does Emmanuel continue to position itself to do so? And it's really through the thoughtful, innovative leadership of women, right? And although we are a co-ed institution, to say that all of these big changes and innovative moves have happened from the grit and determination of the Sisters of Notre Dame is incredible. And I think that still keeps that real focus on women can do anything, and Emmanuel graduates can do anything. It's just such a empowering vision to watch over the past several decades unfold. And I take special connection to that as a leader of a school community who has faced similar struggle throughout the last 15 years, and how we've been able to use that innovation inspired by Sister Janet and Sister Ann to navigate tough times is incredible. So.
Thank you, Allie. Our third question: how did Emmanuel influence your life and career choices? David, may we start with you?
Absolutely. Thank you, Joanne. So being an Emmanuel student afforded me the opportunity to have many possibilities of learning. I was a member of the student government. I played soccer. I worked in the facilities department as a student worker there. I participated with many other groups on campus. And I really believe that helped shape me in the way of being open to learning new things, being able to keep an open mind, offering opportunities that I may have not explored had Emmanuel not had the plethora of options and opportunities for its students that they offered. And I've carried that forward into my life and into my career, and challenged myself to continue to open doors and push myself to use what I learned at Emmanuel with those various options out into the world and into the workplace. New experiences were something that were often happening as a student at Emmanuel, and if I were to carry something away, it would be that towards my approach in life.
Thank you, David. Andrea, tell us about your life, career choices as a result of Emmanuel.
Well, I think there's a common theme that we're hearing this morning. I think the influence of being around strong women. The chairman of our chemistry department was Sister Mary John Hoyt. She was an extremely strong woman. We had almost all of our teachers were Sister Ann Cyril. They gave me personally the confidence to pursue a career, which in those days was not, terribly friendly to women. I went into chemistry, but there's a bigger influence that Emmanuel had on me. I decided to change careers 10 years out of Emmanuel, and I thought about going to law school. And I have to give a shout out to one of my classmates and her mother, both of who were Emmanuel graduates. I didn't know any lawyers. There was nobody in my family that was a lawyer, but my classmate Elaine had become a doctor, and I said, no disrespect to her, but I thought at her wedding, if she can become a doctor, I guess I can become a lawyer. And her mother was a lawyer, a faithful Emmanuel graduate, and they were my advisors. That led me to say, yes, you can go to Emmanuel, you can go to law school. And I graduated from law school 10 years almost to the day that I graduated from Emmanuel. So I think that Emmanuel's influence is I think giving women particularly in the sciences today, that's all about talking about women getting into science. There was no question then that women were going into science. It was just the way it was. It was the way it was. We didn't think it was unusual. So I think Emmanuel gave me the confidence to pursue a career both in science and in law.
Wonderful. Thank you. Marion, if you'd unmute yourself, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So I had a very long relationship with Emmanuel, and I tell this story all the time because I think it shows the value of early marketing. I was in the first grade, not much older than Aurora, when I went to an elementary school where we were taught by the Sisters of Notre Dame, and they took us on some kind of a field trip to Emmanuel. We must have gone to see a play or see something. I have no idea why we were there, but I have such a memory of being on the Fenway and all this traffic. And I grew up in Somerville, so I was a city person. And coming into that campus, and I thought it was like a little pocket garden. And I thought that's where I'm going to college. And I was 6. And I graduated from high school, sort of a very preppy school at a time when beyond Andrea, where women were expected to push to go to the best schools, and it was part of our charge to integrate these schools with women. And I really just never wavered from wanting to be at Emmanuel. And I have to say, I feel that way every time I drive onto campus. I love that place. And I think in terms of where I went with my career, Andrea's mentioned, and I don't think there's anyone who goes to Emmanuel who, number one, doesn't have a great education. And particularly, I don't think it matters what you major in. I was a double major in English and political science, but particularly around, I learned to write well. I learned to think critically. And really importantly, I think I learned to speak and know what I had to say. And when you look across people graduating from great schools today, those are skills that if you have them, you go to the front of whatever profession you are in. And in terms of the confidence piece of it, certainly when I went to law school, there were a tiny number of women there. When I became a criminal lawyer, there were even fewer women, but we were really taught, and again, I think it was the impact of the Sisters of Notre Dame. You know, I didn't think about taking a seat at the table. I expected to be entitled to be at the table. And frankly, I very politely stepped around people who might have been trying to take my chair. And that is an invaluable kind of gift. And probably the biggest piece is, and I see this all the time in my work now, is that social justice piece. When I was a freshman, I took a sociology class with Sister Maria Augusta, and I have to say it was not my favorite class at the time, but the sole question for the whole semester was, why do people in the United States go to bed hungry when we are the richest country in the world? And I think of that all the time, and it so influences my work in criminal justice. You know, why am I prosecuting the children and grandchildren of people that I prosecuted before? And frankly, what are we doing to move things forward? And those are all things that I took from the Fenway and have really influenced my whole life.
Thank you so much. Allie, do you want to unmute? Thank you.
Joanne, do you mind repeating the question? There are so many things that I was enthralled about by what Marion was saying.
Sure. How did your Emmanuel experience influence your life and career choices? Happy to do so.
Just
Great.
take those first graders to Emmanuel. They'll be signed
Well,
up
I was
forever.
going to say, I'm like, yeah, we do that already. And to hear so many kids talking about going to college because they're on that college campus is amazing. So that continues today. So I started freshman year at Emmanuel, I was incredibly passionate about service learning, community service, wanted to have an opportunity to get into the community that I was living in. That was a huge focus of Emmanuel then, and I know that it is now as well. And I had an opportunity to work at a after school program that was right on the other side of Ruggles, called, at the time it was called St. Catherine's, now it is called Sister Mary Hart. And I was tutoring students that were students of Mission Grammar School, which is where I work now. And I had just an opportunity to be a part of a community that was so incredible. Then it came time to really think about, where I wanted to teach when I grew up, and what I wanted to do with my career. And I started thinking very seriously about teaching in Mission Hill, teaching in Roxbury. And that was because I felt that I was, I wanted to be a part of that community in a meaningful way. And I wanted to continue those relationships that I found had taught me so much. And I wanted to see how I could connect more deeply with that community. So after I graduated from the ed school at Harvard, I went over and I applied to Mission Grammar School. And to my great surprise, an Emmanuel alum, Maura Bradley, had just taken over as principal there. And to see on my interview day, I remember, I still have her business card. I remember that interview day, seeing how much she had changed that school in just 1 year. The influence of, again, an Emmanuel woman taking on this leadership opportunity and really transforming the school, the campus, the life, the culture. It was amazing. And I wanted to be a part of that. So I immediately began, I called my mom and I was like, oh my gosh, I fell in love with Mission Grammar School. What do I do? I wanted to work at the public school next door. And she said, you have to follow your heart and you have to listen to what is drawing you to Mission Grammar. So I have never left since then. I've just become a permanent fixture in the community. And it's been, so much of the success of our school and the success of my development there has been in great part because of Emmanuel. Not only was I well prepared and had fantastic mentors and connections that really supported my growth, I am able to see firsthand how the impact of the college supports the development of another generation, because our scholars we say they are living the gospel. They are on the road to college each and every day. We have 200 Emmanuel volunteers every single year flooding our campus and sending that college going culture and message to our children, our students. And it is inspiring to see happen. We have 10 Emmanuel alum on staff, myself included. And some of my very best friends from the class of 2005, Zuleika Andrade and Albert Hale, are also members of our community. And my children also go to our school. So I've been able to see perfect timing. She's coming in right now, but I've been able to see the impact of an Emmanuel education and the partnerships, the deep partnerships we have on my very own children too, which has been truly tremendous. So I'm definitely where I am because of Emmanuel, and I'm staying where I am because of Emmanuel. And I see the opportunity and power of impact in the community.
Thanks, Allie. This is our final formal question of the panelists. And we're now interested in how your life has changed during the pandemic over the past year. And has it impacted your relationship with Emmanuel? And I know we touched upon this before our program began. Andrea touched upon it during her earlier remarks. So starting with Andrea, if you'd again unmute yourself, that would be wonderful. How has life changed for you over the past year? And what's the relationship with Emmanuel?
Well, not to keep harping on my advanced years, but the fact that I'm retired, I don't think the pandemic has had as much as an impact on my life over the last year as it has on younger people. But it has had an impact. And one of the things I think we've talked about innovation a lot, several people have mentioned it. I'm just amazed at how we've gone from things that people, when I was in the workplace, people would say the life we would, as we know, it would be over if people could work from home. It would be the end of civilization. And now we're working from home. I hear people saying that you may never go back. I mean, those are the things. They haven't impacted me personally because I'm no longer working, but I do see how the workforce is probably forever changed. And as far as how the pandemic has affected my relationship with Emmanuel, I do miss our in-person board meetings. We have a very proactive, interactive board, Marian being a member as well. I miss those meetings. I always look forward to the camaraderie and the great personal exchange, both with the faculty and with my fellow board members. And the only other thing, and I mentioned it earlier about when I heard, my heart dropped when Emmanuel closed. I thought, oh, this could be a very, very bad thing for all small colleges. And I really prayed that Emmanuel will get through it. And I knew that with Sister Janet and the board and the faculty, I think they've done very successfully. I hope some of you listened to Sister Janet's talk the other night. She explained how not only did we get through it, but they took the time of the pandemic to complete the nursing lab, the wonderful nursing school lab. They used that as an opportunity during the pandemic. So I think basically my reaction to the pandemic is it's been pretty positive.
Thank you. And Marion, your life during the pandemic and relationship with Emmanuel.
So like Andrea, I miss seeing people. I love being on the Board of Trustees. We have really amazing people who are so committed to the mission of the school. So we've done our Zoom meetings and that's been good, but I'm looking forward to being able to be back in person. I think the innovation piece, I am the least technically savvy person in the world, but we've all had to sort of learn that and do it. And it is amazing to me how much we've been able to do. So for me, it's sort of two pieces. We have a very large office. We have a little over 250 people scattered all over the county, and many of whom are young. This is their first professional job. We hire for people to start in the fall, so they've been there a very short time. A lot of them are here in Boston, away from their families, and were here during the pandemic. So a lot of our work has been around trying to keep a community, keep people connected, manage people's very real concerns about their own health and safety in terms of, you know, coming to court, all of that. And the second piece of it really has been, and I think this is always useful, how much we have learned from this. There are so many pieces. As anxious as I am to get back to regular life, we've learned to do so many things better during the pandemic. I'll give you one quick example. We run 13 courts across 877 miles in Middlesex County. Parts of our county do not have very good public transportation. The public transportation we do have is expensive. And for many of the people we serve in various capacities, getting back and forth to court involves a long trip on public transportation. They have jobs where they don't have a lot of personal time. So if they don't work, they don't get paid. And they may spend 3 or 4 hours in transit for a court hearing that takes 15 minutes. And learning to do that on Zoom has just been amazing. I hope we never fully go back to the way we were, because I think that's another way that we've made the system more accessible to people, really meeting them where they are in their lives. And there's just a host of those, to people being able to get the kind of mental health and substance treatment they need from the comfort of their home, without, again, losing work, hiring a babysitter, and traveling, especially for 6 months of the year when the weather's bad. So I think those have been great things that have happened, and I'm really looking forward to incorporating those into our lives going forward.
Thank you, Marion. Allie, tell us about the impact of the pandemic and your relationship with Emmanuel. We touched upon this a bit earlier.
Yes. So I work in a school. We serve 293 infants through grade 6 scholars. And when the pandemic happened, we were in the very beginning stages of a capital campaign to raise $2.1 million to add to our school campus, to add classrooms. I'm very happy to say that people were incredibly generous, and we closed out that campaign in 8 weeks' time. And we were able to use the opportunity, similar to what Sister Janet was saying, in the pandemic, when we had no one in the school physically, to be able to do construction, and we were able to open that brand new, newly renovated building in September. And we did also go back to in-person learning very early. We were the first Catholic school in the city of Boston to go back on July 6th of 2020. So really having to prepare in this just unknown world, not only to do our jobs, but our jobs involve safety and public health of children. So becoming a public health expert or a guru on the turn of a dime was incredibly complex and challenging for our community. But we did it going back to every single thing that was important to us, which was our families and our relationships with our families and our scholars, making sure that families were informed and part of the decision-making process while we reopened, just as Emmanuel had done, really listening to the needs of the community. So, and I mentioned that we have about 200 Emmanuel volunteers every year. So that has looked really different this year. We really rely on our Emmanuel students to be mentors and tutors and substitute and do all these wonderful things on our campus. And we've just started now to do more in-person things with them. But we had 90 Emmanuel online Zoom tutors for our kids this year, which is incredible. So imagine having a personal relationship with an Emmanuel student as a sixth grader. And, you know, having those tutoring sessions, again, like we're cutting down on the commuting time. They're instantly on. And we also found that you know, this Zoom platform has been so supportive to build our family relationships. We've had family coffee hours every single week. So we've finished a complete year of family coffee hours every Thursday at 1. Families come on and talk about what's going on in their lives and how they're feeling. But that wasn't something that was part of our practice previously. So we want to keep those things in place. We also, you know, have just such an opportunity to connect with more people all at once, being able to invite people in. We have an advocacy showcase coming up for our sixth graders in the next couple of days. We were able to invite all of those Emmanuel tutors to come back and watch their work on Zoom, which was awesome. And we've never felt, although it has changed, the modality has changed, we haven't felt that we are not able to live our mission as a school or fulfill our partnership with Emmanuel as a school either, because we've been able to rely on those relationships and making sure that everyone has access. I will say, though, that I am really looking forward to coming out of this pandemic as a school leader, and it's going to be really different, but we're really thrilled to be on this side of things and have this you know, mountain that we've climbed. We're still climbing, but to look back on that and know that we've survived with the support of our partners like Emmanuel has been tremendous.
Wonderful. Thanks, Allie. And David, we spoke a bit about pandemic life and your work schedule. So share with us impact and relationship with Emmanuel.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I've been, as I'm sure many of you have in the audience, I've been working remotely since March of last year. 5 days a week, have not returned to the office one time. So that has brought a lot of challenges, but it's also brought a lot of opportunities from a work-life balance perspective, a flexibility perspective, and really afforded, you know, some innovation as well that has been mentioned by some other folks on the panel going forward. And like you, Marian, I do hope that we don't go back to the way it was on a grand scale, because I think that this connection to Zoom and WebEx or whatever system you're using has opened up more doors and opportunities for people to have a meeting for 20 minutes in the morning and then be back to work or go to a doctor's appointment in the afternoon without, you know, commuting an hour just to get back home. You know, in addition to that, on a more personal level, I have a very young daughter, and you know, this is kind of a once in a lifetime situation. I've been able to watch her grow from 6 months to being 2 in September, that I would have never got to have either. So that has been, you know, a strong blessing. As it relates to Emmanuel, being a member of the Young Alumni Council, it's actually deepened and strengthened my relationship with Emmanuel over the last year, because like the board, who has had, you know, Zoom meetings for the last year, we've also been doing our events virtually. We've been having our meetings virtually, but it's also forced, you know, innovation towards doing virtual events, connecting with people in new ways, and also, you know, bringing forward what the alumni council is looking to do, you know, long term. So
Thank you. Appreciate that. This concludes the formal section, and we certainly appreciate all of your wonderful insights. We do have a couple of questions. So I'll read the question and to whom it is directed. Not necessary for all of you to reply, as some of them are quite specific. And beginning with David again, it was mentioned that your wife, Siobhan, is also an Emmanuel alum. Can you tell us a little bit how you met and a bit about your love story?
Certainly. So Siobhan and I met my junior year, our junior year, excuse me, through a mutual friend, and you know, really ever since we met in September of 2009, I believe, we've been connected at the hip ever since. We were married. We got married in 2016 with many Emmanuel graduates and friends in attendance, and like I said, our daughter was born in 2019, September 2019. So it's been a little more than 10 years since we've known each other.
Well, thanks for sharing that personal insight. Very heartwarming. We also have a question for each of you. What do you want to see at Emmanuel that isn't there now? And what would you like to see more investment in? Marion, can we start with you on that one?
Sure. I think the investment, which I would venture to guess, I speak for everybody on the panel, is in making an Emmanuel education available to everyone. You know, right now, so many families are struggling. Education is so expensive. We see so many young people, especially if they want to pursue a graduate degree, who are just really swamped with educational debt. And that wasn't the case, at least for me, when I was at Emmanuel. You know, you were able, with the government assistance that you could get and working part-time jobs, you were able to get pretty close to where you needed to be to pay tuition. That certainly is not the case now. So I think that is probably my greatest hope, is that for so many people for whom an Emmanuel education would change their lives, we're able to continue to make that available.
Thank you, Marion. Allie, what is it you'd like to see at Emmanuel that isn't there now?
I mean, I always feel that they're a step ahead of the game anyways. So I don't know that I'd be able to add much to what Marion has said. I agree completely that accessibility in education is key, but also, you know, we've been doing a lot of work on I know that many students from Boston come into Emmanuel, and I think, you know, really intentionally about that pipeline of opportunity in the city of Boston specifically. So I think just continuing that and making sure that those opportunities are there for also success, and Emmanuel's commitment to social justice is what makes it so incredibly special and unique. And I think living that as loudly as possible at any opportunity is key. So
thank you. David.
Joanne, can you repeat the question, please?
Of course. What would you like to see at Emmanuel that's not there now? And what would you like to see more investment in?
Echoing what Marian had mentioned, you know, I think, you know, higher education is very expensive in this day and age, and a continued priority towards investing in the students that want to join Emmanuel, giving them opportunities to get an Emmanuel education, and really, you know, opening the doors to make that a reality with the financial constraints of today. I think Emmanuel does a wonderful job already, and I think, you know, keeping that present and as a continued focus for continuing classes will be critical.
Thank you. And Andrea?
I had to think a little bit about this because I think things are going along quite well, but one of the things that is there already, but I know people are working to make it stronger. We have a very strong science base, a department, people, but there is a lot of funding that is still to be had. I know Joe Kurtz and Danielle Kellerman are working on things like that, but I think that getting some big grants from some of the big pharmaceutical companies, which I know well, there's a lot of money in Boston that could be directed, and it would, even though it would benefit the sciences, I think it would benefit what Marion and others are saying, that it would also bring down the cost of education if we could get some big dollars flowing into Emmanuel through the sciences.
Thank you very much. This actually concludes our then and now panel. Fun to hear about then, wonderful, enthusiastic to hear about now, as Emmanuel enters into and is processing during the second century. On behalf of the entire community, thank you to the panelists for your engaging and talented accomplishments and discussion today. Also, thanks to everyone in the community who did participate. I hope you enjoy the rest of your reunion class celebrations, the rest of your weekend if you're not celebrating a reunion. And I certainly am looking forward to an in-person reunion with all of us on campus in 2022. Till then, God with us. Thank you all.
Thank you.